Ethan sat in the corner of the great space station hall, watching the alien delegation arrive. The hall was filled with tension, filled with whispers, filled with fear. The alien visitors were not just ordinary beings. They were leaders from a proud warrior race known across the galaxy. No human had ever dared to speak to them directly, not without permission. Their leader was a tall figure with silver-blue skin, sharp golden eyes, and a presence that made even the strongest men look away. Her name was Soraya, and she was feared and respected by all. Ethan's fellow workers avoided her gaze. They bent their heads low, pretending not to notice her. But Ethan's eyes followed her every movement, not with fear, but with curiosity. Something inside him told him she was not only powerful, but also lonely. Her face was calm, yet her eyes looked heavy, as if she carried a burden too great for one soul. The hall grew silent when she stepped forward, her long cloak brushing against the polished floor. Every step echoed, and humans froze like statues. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Ethan felt his heart racing, his hands trembling, but he could not look away. He thought to himself, what would happen if I spoke to her? His friend Jalen whispered harshly, don't even think about it. Ethan, one word and they'll throw you out of the airlock. But Ethan only smiled faintly, his mind already burning with reckless thought. He had always been different, always willing to step where others would never go. And now here, before the most powerful alien ambassador, his courage was about to be tested. Soraya spoke in her language, her voice deep and graceful. A translator orb floated beside her, echoing her words in human speech. Humans will follow the rules of the treaty. You will not interfere with our mission, the orb declared. Everyone nodded quickly, agreeing, submitting. Everyone, except Ethan. He leaned back in his chair, his lips twitching as if ready to speak. Jalen grabbed his arm, whispering, don't do it, please don't do it. But Ethan's heart beat louder than fear. He stood up, and all eyes turned to him. The hall fell into absolute silence. Soraya's golden eyes landed on him, sharp like blades. Most men would have dropped dead under such a gaze, but Ethan held on. His voice shook at first, but he forced the words out. Ambassador Soraya, he said, would you go out with me? The hall gasped. Humans covered their mouths in shock. Aliens hissed and muttered angrily. Jalen nearly fainted, whispering, you're insane. Ethan, you're dead. Guards stepped forward, ready to strike him down. But Soraya lifted her hand, stopping them instantly. Her eyes narrowed, her face unreadable. The silence stretched on, so heavy that Ethan thought time itself had frozen. For a long moment, no one dared to move. The humans waited for his execution. The aliens waited for her wrath. And Ethan stood tall, his heart hammering, but his eyes steady. Soraya tilted her head slightly, studying him. Her lips curved, not into a frown, but into something strange. A faint smile touched her face, a smile so small yet so powerful that the hall trembled with confusion. No one expected it. No one could understand it. Why would she smile at a human's foolish request? She spoke softly, her words echoing through the translator orb. You are either the bravest human I have ever seen, or the most foolish, she said. Ethan's chest rose with pride, even as fear gripped his stomach. I'll take brave, he replied with a grin. The guards looked at her for orders, but she lowered her hand. Leave him, she commanded. The aliens obeyed instantly, though their faces were full of disbelief. The humans stared at Ethan as if he had lost his mind. But deep inside, something had already begun. A spark had been lit, a chain of events set in motion. Soraya turned away gracefully, but not before giving Ethan one last long look. Her golden eyes held something no one else could read. Was it interest? Was it warning? Ethan did not know, but his heart told him this was only the beginning. When she left the hall, Jalen shook Ethan by the shoulders, his voice nearly breaking. Do you have a death wish? She could have killed you with a glance. But Ethan only laughed nervously, wiping the sweat from his forehead. I had to try, he said. I don't know why, but I had to. The rumor spread across the station within minutes. The human asked the alien leader out. People whispered, "He's crazy," some said. "He's brave," others argued. And somewhere, deep inside her chambers, Soraya thought about the human who had dared to speak. Her lips curved again, that faint smile returning. And for the first time in years, the mighty alien leader felt something unexpected. She felt curious. Curious about a human named Ethan, who had just changed his destiny with one reckless question. Ethan could not sleep that night. His small cabin on the station felt colder than usual, as if the air itself carried the weight of his reckless words. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her golden stare, her faint smile, the silence of the hall. People had looked at him as if he had doomed himself. Yet something deep inside whispered that this was not the end, but the beginning. The next morning, whispers followed him everywhere. Workers pointed at him when they thought he was not looking. "Is that the human who asked her out?" One whispered. "He won't last the week." Another muttered. Even the guards of the docking bays shook their heads when he passed by. But Ethan kept walking, holding his head high, because giving in to fear had never been his way. Later that day, a messenger drone arrived at his cabin door. Its sleek metallic body glowed faintly as it delivered a holographic message. Ethan froze as the shimmering image of Soraya appeared before him. Her voice was calm, controlled, but her eyes held something sharper than steel. "You dare to speak before me," she said, "and no human has ever done such a thing." Ethan swallowed hard, but stayed silent, listening. "You wish for my company, but it is not so simple. In my world, worth is proven, not spoken." The hologram flickered, and her final words cut through him like fire. "If you truly wish for me to consider your request, you will face the trial of courage." The message ended, and silence filled his cabin. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, his mind spinning. A trial? He had no idea what it meant, but the fire in his chest only grew stronger. He whispered to himself, "If this is what it takes, then I'll do it." Hours later, the trial began. Escorted by 2 alien guards, Ethan was taken to the lower levels of the station. The corridors became darker, colder, lined with strange alien symbols glowing faintly on the walls. Finally, they reached a massive door that hissed open with a deep rumble. Inside was a chamber unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The air shimmered with energy, the ground shifting as if alive. Floating platforms hovered above bottomless pits, twisting in unpredictable patterns. Shadows moved across the walls, shapes with glowing eyes watching him from the darkness. One guard spoke in a low voice, "Survive this path, human, and perhaps our leader will grant you another word." The door shut behind him, sealing him inside. Ethan's heart thundered in his chest, but his legs moved forward. Each step on the shifting platforms threatened to send him falling into the abyss. The air crackled, forcing him to duck as bolts of energy lashed across his path. But he pressed on, gritting his teeth, whispering, "I won't quit, not now." As he moved deeper, the shadows grew closer. From the darkness emerged alien guardians, tall, armored figures with blades that glowed like fire. They circled him, their movements fast and precise. Ethan picked up a metal rod from the floor, the only weapon he could find. His hands shook, but he stood ready. The first guardian struck, and the clash echoed like thunder. Ethan was thrown back, pain shooting through his arms, but he did not surrender. He fought back with every ounce of strength, dodging, blocking, swinging wildly. His body screamed in pain, but his spirit burned brighter with every strike. Minutes turned to hours, or so it felt. Sweat ran down his face, his arms bruised and aching, but he refused to stop. Finally, with one desperate move, he knocked the last guardian into the abyss. Breathing hard, his chest heaving, Ethan collapsed to his knees. But he was alive. He had survived. The chamber shifted again, the platforms realigning into a path that led to a glowing doorway. Ethan stumbled forward, his vision blurred, his body broken, but his will unshaken. As he stepped through the doorway, he found himself standing before Soraya herself. She was waiting, calm, regal, her eyes locked on him. The faint smile returned, this time sharper, more curious. "You are still alive," she said softly, as if surprised. Ethan wiped the blood from his lips and laughed weakly. "Was that your idea of a first date?" he asked, his voice raw. The alien guards tensed at his boldness, but Soraya raised her hand, silencing them. Her golden eyes narrowed, and for the first time, her voice carried something almost human. "Perhaps you are not a fool after all," she whispered. Ethan straightened, his chest rising with stubborn pride. "So, Ambassador," he said, "what's your answer now?" The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unseen weight. Soraya stepped closer, her cloak brushing against the floor, her gaze never leaving his. "You have taken the first step," she said, "but destiny is not decided in a single trial." Her words cut through him, yet they carried a strange promise. "This is only the beginning," she declared, turning away. And as she left the chamber, Ethan knew deep in his soul that his life had changed forever. The chamber doors closed behind Ethan with a heavy clang, echoing in the silence of the station's deep core. His body still ached from the first trial, his arms bruised, his breathing rough, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He had survived what no human was meant to survive, and yet Soraya's words haunted him. "This is only the beginning," she had said, and Ethan could not forget the cold certainty in her voice. The next morning, the station was alive with whispers. Every corridor, every corner carried his name. The human lived, they said in disbelief. The fool survived, others mocked. But beneath the ridicule was something else, curiosity, a dangerous kind. Aliens who once ignored him now looked at him differently, some with interest, others with hate. Ethan felt the weight of 1,000 eyes, yet he walked with steady steps, refusing to bow. When the messenger drone returned, Ethan almost expected it. The shimmering image of Soraya appeared again, tall and commanding. "You have proven courage in the chamber," she said, "but courage alone is not enough." Her golden eyes pierced through the projection as if they could see into his soul. "To stand beside me, you must endure the true trial, the one no human has ever dared attempt." Her voice carried no softness this time, only fire. Ethan's lips curved into a grin despite the fear growing in his chest. "Then tell me where to go," he said, "and I'll face it." Hours later, Ethan was escorted to a hidden section of the station. The corridors here were older, darker, lined with strange marks carved into the steel. The air itself seemed heavy, thick with unseen power. Finally, the guards brought him to a gate sealed with glowing locks. Beyond, it was a vast chamber lit by rivers of blue energy that crackled like lightning. Strange machines hovered in the air, shifting, moving, alive yet not alive. It was a maze of traps, puzzles, and dangers designed to break the mind as well as the body. "This is the trial of endurance," one guard said, his voice almost respectful. "No one has crossed it and lived," the other added, his tone sharp. Ethan only clenched his fists, his heart pounding. "I'll be the first," he muttered, stepping through the gate. The trial began with silence. Then the ground shifted beneath him. The floor split into platforms that floated over endless void, each one unstable. Ethan leaped across, his muscles screaming, his mind racing. Bolts of energy lashed down from above, forcing him to roll, to duck, to jump at the last second. He stumbled, nearly fell, but caught himself, whispering through clenched teeth, "Not today." As he advanced, the machines came alive. Drones with glowing blades circled him, darting fast, cutting the air. He fought with nothing but a steel rod he had picked up earlier. Every swing was desperate, every block painful. Yet he refused to surrender, striking until sparks and smoke filled the chamber. One by one, the drones fell until silence returned. But silence did not mean safety. The walls began to shift, closing in like jaws. Ethan ran, his lungs burning, his legs heavy. The platforms tilted, the air thinned, gravity twisted, pulling him down and sideways. He felt the weight crush his chest, yet he roared against it, dragging himself forward. Every step was agony, every breath a battle, but still he moved. At last, after what felt like hours, he reached the heart of the chamber. A pedestal stood there, glowing with alien symbols. Ethan staggered toward it, his vision blurred, his body nearly broken. When he touched it, the chamber roared with light, the walls shaking, the machines freezing in place. The trial had ended. He had endured. As the light faded, a door opened before him. And once again, Soraya stood waiting, tall, calm, untouchable. Her golden eyes studied him carefully, but this time there was no smile. "You live still," she said, her tone unreadable. Ethan laughed weakly, his voice rough. Getting used to this, he said, though his body could barely stand. Soraya stepped closer, her cloak flowing behind her like a shadow. "You continue to surprise me, human," she said quietly. "But surprises do not win wars, nor do they change destiny." Ethan forced himself to meet her gaze, his legs trembling. "Maybe not," he said, "but sometimes one choice, one person, can change everything." The words hung between them, sharp and heavy. For the first time, Soraya looked away, as if his words had pierced something deep within her. Her silence spoke louder than anger, louder than rejection. And Ethan knew then that the real trial had only just begun. Days passed after the trial of endurance, and Ethan found himself the center of whispers once again. Some humans called him mad. Others secretly admired his courage. Aliens studied him with suspicion, their golden eyes following him wherever he went. But beneath all the noise, something else began to happen, something no one could have predicted. Late one evening, as he sat alone in the quiet docking bay, a shadow fell over him. He looked up, and there she was, Soraya, standing tall, her cloak trailing softly across the floor. Her presence made the air itself heavy, yet Ethan felt no fear this time, only curiosity. She dismissed the guards with a simple wave of her hand, leaving the two of them alone. For a long moment, she said nothing, only watched him with those golden eyes that seemed to pierce through his very soul. "You should not have lived," she said finally, her voice calm, almost thoughtful. "No human has ever endured what you did, and yet you still breathe." Ethan leaned back, a small grin tugging at his lips. "Guess I'm tougher than I look," he replied. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger, more like interest. "You are reckless," she said, "but you are not weak." The silence stretched between them, heavy yet strangely comfortable. Then Soraya sat down across from him, her cloak folding neatly around her. No alien leader had ever lowered themselves to sit beside a human. Yet here she was. "Tell me," she asked softly, "why did you do it? Why risk your life for something so foolish?" Ethan met her gaze without hesitation, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "Because life is not worth living without taking risks, and because I saw something in you that no one else sees." Her eyes widened ever so slightly, as if his words had cut deeper than any blade. For years, she had been seen as a warrior, a leader, a symbol of power, but never as a person, never as a soul who could feel, who could be lonely. No one had dared to look at her that way. Until now, she turned her gaze away, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You speak as if you know me, human, yet you know nothing." Ethan leaned forward, his tone firm. "Then let me," he said, "let me know who you are. Not the leader, not the ambassador, but the real you." Her breath caught, and for a moment, the mask of strength she wore so carefully began to crack. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever dared. And against her own will, she felt a pull toward him, a dangerous pull. Their meetings became secret after that night. Sometimes in the docking bay, sometimes in hidden corners of the station where no one would notice. They spoke of small things at first: stars, old battles, human stories, alien legends. Ethan told her of Earth, of oceans and forests, of music and laughter, things Soraya had never known. In return, she told him of her world, of endless deserts lit by twin suns, of warriors born to fight, of duties she could never escape. And slowly, piece by piece, the distance between them began to shrink. Soraya laughed once, softly, almost shyly, when Ethan made a clumsy joke. The sound startled even her, for it had been years since she had laughed. Ethan froze, then smiled warmly. "You should do that more often," he said. "It suits you." She shook her head, her golden eyes narrowing as if to hide her weakness. "Laughter is not for leaders," she replied. "Maybe not," Ethan said, "but it's for people, and you're still one of those." The bond grew, quiet but undeniable. Soraya found herself waiting for the moments when she could see him. Ethan found his thoughts drifting to her even in the middle of the day. It was madness, it was forbidden, but it was real. And in that forbidden bond, they discovered something neither of them expected: trust. Yet danger always loomed. The alien council grew suspicious of her absences, of her moments of distraction. Whispers reached her chambers, questions sharpened into warnings. "Do not forget who you are," they told her. "Do not forget the eyes of our people are always watching." But Soraya's thoughts betrayed her, pulling her back to the human who had dared to risk everything just to see her smile. One night, as they stood together by a viewport, staring at the stars, Ethan spoke quietly. "Do you regret it? Meeting me like this?" She looked at him, her face unreadable, her eyes glowing in the starlight. "Regret?" she whispered. "No, but I fear it." Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then let me carry the fear. You've carried enough already." Her golden eyes softened, and for the first time, Soraya let the mask fall completely. She reached out, her hand brushing against his, just for a second. It was the smallest of touches, yet it felt like a storm. Two worlds colliding, two destinies intertwining. And in that silent moment, both of them knew the truth. The bond they shared was no longer a secret, not to themselves. And soon, it would no longer be a secret to anyone. The secret meetings between Ethan and Soraya could not stay hidden forever. For a while, they had managed to slip away unnoticed, their voices lost in the vastness of the station. But shadows have eyes, and whispers have wings. The council of Soraya's people began to suspect, and suspicion in their world was as deadly as open war. One evening, Soraya entered the Grand Council chamber, her cloak trailing behind her like liquid shadow. The golden-eyed elders sat in a circle, their gazes sharp, their voices colder than steel. "We have heard troubling words, Soraya," one elder said, "words that stain your honor." Another leaned forward, his tone heavy with accusation. "They say you meet with the human, the reckless one who should have died in the trials." The air thickened, the silence heavy with judgment. Soraya stood tall, her expression calm, but inside her heart raced. She knew denial would mean weakness, but truth could destroy everything. "What I do beyond these halls is mine to decide," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the chamber. The elders hissed in disapproval, their robes shifting like restless snakes. "You forget your duty," one snarled. "Our people see you as strength, not as a creature to be softened by mortal hands." Another voice rose, deeper, harsher. "If you continue this path, you will lose not only respect, but the throne itself." Soraya left the chamber with her head high, but her chest was heavy. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of chains, not of iron, but of expectation. She had fought wars, led armies, broken enemies. Yet this quiet war of the heart, felt harder than all of them combined. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed the change too. Guards who once ignored him now followed his steps, their hands never far from their weapons. Workers who whispered in awe now whispered in fear. And Jalen, his closest friend, pulled him aside one night. his face pale, his voice low. "Ethan, you need to stop. This isn't a game anymore. They'll kill you, or worse, they'll use you to break her." Ethan clenched his fists, his jaw tight. "I can't stop, Jalen. Not now. Not when she's risked more than I ever could." Their bond grew stronger, even as the walls closed in. Soraya met him less often, but when she did, her words were softer, her eyes heavier. "They will come for you," she warned one night. "They will not let this continue." Ethan touched her hand gently, his voice steady. "Then let them come. I'm not leaving you." Her golden eyes searched his face, looking for fear, but finding only stubborn resolve. It both angered and touched her, for she had never known anyone so foolish, yet so unshakably loyal. The breaking point came sooner than expected. During a council assembly attended by humans and aliens alike, a proclamation was made. The human named Ethan is to be exiled from this station, the elder declared, his voice echoing across the hall. "His presence corrupts, his influence weakens, he does not belong." Gasps filled the chamber. Humans looked in shock, aliens in cold approval. Ethan stood frozen, his heart pounding. Exile meant the end, not only of his place here, but of any chance to see Soraya again. Guards stepped forward, their weapons ready, but before they could touch him, Ethan raised his voice. His words rang out strong, carrying a fire no one expected. "If you want me gone, then take me, but know this, I would rather face death than betray her." The hall erupted in chaos, voices clashing, anger rising. Humans looked at him with awe, aliens with fury. And through it all, Soraya rose to her feet, her cloak sweeping wide like the wings of a storm. "Enough," she commanded, her voice shaking the chamber. All fell silent. All eyes turned to her. She looked at Ethan, then at the council, her jaw set like stone. "You call his courage weakness, but I call it strength," she said. "You call his loyalty corruption, but I call it honor." The elders bristled, their faces dark with rage. "You would defy us for him?" one demanded. Soraya's golden eyes burned like suns, her voice unflinching. "I would defy the galaxy itself." The chamber fell into stunned silence. No one had ever heard their leader speak with such fire. Not for war, not for conquest, but for a human. The line had been crossed, the bond no longer secret. The storm had broken, and there was no turning back. That night, as they stood together once more, Ethan whispered, "They'll never forgive you for this." Soraya looked at him, her face calm, but her heart blazing. "Then let them hate," she said. "I have chosen my path, and now we walk it together." And as the stars burned cold beyond the viewport, Ethan knew that the fight ahead would be unlike any he had ever imagined. For love had drawn battle lines sharper than any blade, and the war had only just begun. The council's fury spread like fire across the station. Whispers turned into shouts, and shouts turned into threats. Soraya's name, once spoken with respect, was now tangled with doubt and anger. "Has she betrayed us for a human?" some cried. Others demanded her removal, their voices rising in secret meetings and crowded halls. Ethan felt the storm pressing closer every day. Guards followed him at every corner, their golden eyes sharp with silent warning. Humans who once admired him now stepped back in fear, not wanting to be caught near him. Even Jalen avoided his gaze, his voice heavy when he finally said, "You've dragged her into a war she can't win, Ethan, and maybe yourself too." Ethan's heart tightened, but he answered without hesitation, "If I must burn for this, then I'll burn, as long as she doesn't fall with me." That night, Soraya summoned him in secret, her voice urgent, her eyes darker than usual. "They are moving against us," she said. "The council prepares a vote to strip me of command." Ethan stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Then I'll fight them," he said. "I'll stand by you, no matter what it costs." But she shook her head, her cloak flowing like midnight shadow as she turned away. "You don't understand. Their hatred is not just for you. It is for me now, too. They will destroy us both." Ethan reached for her hand, his voice low, steady. "Then let me be the target. Not you. Her golden eyes snapped back to him, sharp with fury. Do not speak of sacrifice as if it is simple, she hissed. You are human, fragile, one life broken and gone, while I carry the weight of thousands. But Ethan did not back down, his voice burning. You carry too much, Soraya. Let me carry something for you, even if it means carrying all the pain. Her mask cracked for a moment, and in her silence, Ethan saw the truth. She feared not for herself, but for him. No one had ever chosen her over their own life. Not once, not ever. Yet here he was, ready to give everything, without hesitation. And it terrified her, because she wanted to let him, but her pride chained her to silence. The next day, the council gathered in the great hall. Elders stood in their ceremonial robes, their voices cold, their decision already clear. Soraya, the high elder declared, you have disgraced our people with this weakness, this attachment to a human. You will step down, or you'll be forced down. The hall roared with approval, the crowd stamping, the guards tightening their grip on their weapons. Ethan stood at her side, his heart pounding, his mind screaming at him to act. And in that moment, clarity struck him. If she lost her throne because of him, she would lose not only her power but her people, her purpose, her very life. He could not let that happen, not to her, not when she had given him more than he ever dreamed. So he stepped forward, raising his voice above the storm. Enough, he shouted, and the hall fell silent. Every eye turned to him, every alien face twisted in contempt. But Ethan stood tall, his voice carrying with unshakable fire. If blame must be given, then give it to me, exile me, kill me, do whatever you want, but she is not guilty of anything. It was I who asked her, I who stood before her, I who crossed the line. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The council sneered, some satisfied, others angered at his audacity. You would take her punishment? The high elder demanded. Ethan's jaw tightened, his chest rising as he spoke without fear. Yes, gladly, because I would rather give my life than watch you tear hers apart. The hall erupted again, chaos shaking the very walls. Guards moved forward, weapons ready, but Soraya stepped in front of Ethan, her golden eyes blazing like suns. Stop, she commanded, her voice striking like thunder. No one will touch him. The elders rose in fury, their voices clashing. You dare defy us still? One shouted. Soraya lifted her chin, her voice cutting through the storm. I do, and I will, because for the first time, I have found something worth more than thrones or titles, and I will not let it be destroyed. The chamber froze, the silence sharp as a blade. For in her words was a truth undeniable. Her choice had been made. Ethan looked at her, his chest heavy, his throat tight. He had offered his life to save her, but she had offered her throne to protect him. Two sacrifices, two hearts refusing to break. And in that clash of wills, the bond between them became unshakable. But both knew the war was far from over. For when love stands against an empire, sacrifice is only the beginning. The council chamber was still trembling from Soraya's words. Elders glared at her, their golden eyes filled with fury, their pride wounded beyond repair. They had expected her to surrender, to bow to their will, but instead she had chosen defiance. Worse still, she had chosen a human, a choice that shook the very foundation of their power. You are no longer fit to lead. The high elder spat, his voice heavy with venom. You place love above duty, weakness above strength. This is the end of your reign. Guards stepped forward, weapons drawn, the sharp hum of energy filling the air. The hall tensed, humans pressed against the walls, fearing what would come next. But Ethan moved first, stepping in front of Soraya, his arms spread wide. If you want blood, he said firmly, take mine, but leave her. Gasps filled the chamber. A human, standing against the blades of an empire, his voice carrying more weight than entire armies. Soraya's heart tightened as she looked at him, the reckless fool who had turned her world upside down. For a moment, she felt fear, not for herself, but for him. But then, something inside her broke free, something fierce and unstoppable. "No," she said, her voice thunderous. "You will not touch him, you will not touch us." Her golden eyes blazed brighter than the suns of her homeworld, her presence filling the hall like a storm. "You speak of weakness, yet you cannot see the truth. Strength is not in power alone. It is in loyalty, in courage, in the fire of a soul that refuses to break." She pointed to Ethan, her voice sharp as lightning. "This human has shown you what true strength is, something you, in all your pride, have forgotten." The chamber erupted in chaos, some aliens shouting in rage, others falling into uneasy silence. For the first time, cracks appeared in the council's iron control. Whispers spread through the crowd, not of betrayal, but of doubt. Could it be that their leader was right? Could it be that strength could come from something as simple as love? The High Elder raised his staff, fury burning in his voice. "Then you both will die," he declared. The guards surged forward, but Soraya moved with inhuman speed, her cloak swirling, her blade flashing into her hand. She struck first, disarming one guard, her golden eyes burning with defiance. Ethan grabbed the fallen weapon, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. Together, they fought side by side, human and alien, two against many. The clash shook the chamber, sparks flying, shouts echoing, steel meeting steel. It was madness, it was impossible, yet it happened. Ethan's every strike was fueled not by skill, but by determination. Soraya's every movement was precise, powerful, a storm unleashed at last. And in that storm, something shifted. Some guards hesitated, their loyalty torn, their eyes watching their leader fight, not for herself, but for the human at her side. For the first time, they saw her not as a symbol, but as a warrior who believed in something greater than power. Minutes felt like hours, the chamber littered with broken weapons and fallen pride. At last, the High Elder himself stepped forward, his fury unshaken. "You cannot win, Soraya," he hissed. "You will destroy us all." Soraya lifted her chin, her golden eyes glowing like fire. "No," she said, "I will save us, not by fear, not by tyranny, but by proving that strength can be more than conquest." Her words cut through the air like a blade, and slowly, one by one, the guards lowered their weapons. The elders looked around in disbelief as loyalty slipped from their grasp. The tide had turned, not by force, but by conviction. And in that moment, the empire itself began to change. Ethan stood beside her, bruised, bleeding, yet smiling. "You really know how to make a first date unforgettable," he whispered. Soraya glanced at him, and for the first time in front of her people, she let herself smile. "You are a fool," she said softly, "but you are my fool." The hall, once filled with fury, now carried silence. A silence that marked the death of one age and the birth of another. Ethan had dared to ask an alien out, and in doing so, he had changed not only his own destiny, but hers, and perhaps the destiny of two species. What began as a reckless question had become a spark that would burn into legend. And as they stood together beneath the endless stars, their hands brushing, their eyes steady, they knew the truth. The future was uncertain, the battles ahead would be hard, but they would face them together. Two souls from different worlds, bound not by duty, not by fear, but by the unshakable fire of love and courage. Destiny had been rewritten forever,